So if I turn my back to someone while I'm walking in a different direction, please forgive me. My name is Betsy Wagner. That's the name I go by for my books. It's actually Mary Elizabeth Vickers Howard Wagner. So that's a lot to carry around. So just call me Betsy. I want to talk to you this morning about how life is full of surprises. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Surprises. You have surprises in life. As a teacher, I was always a planner. You know, you have that plan book. And even when I retired, I had to have my plan book to know what I was going to do. If it wasn't written down, it wasn't going to get done. So when I retired, I sort of embraced spontaneity a little bit more than I used to. And with that, some surprises came along. And the result of the surprises in my life are these two books that are displayed, the fronts are displayed here in the front of the room. I'll tell you a little bit about each one. And as a result of the surprises and the process of creating these books, I have become what I consider an accidental historian. I didn't intend to do that, and that too may be happening to some of you as you look for your ancestry. You go off on tangents and you find yourself digging in what my cousin calls rabbit holes to find what happened in the past. How did we get here? About 3 years ago, I came to this very room and shared with you my first book because it's about Gonzales. One of the surprises in my life was that a distant uncle related to my father's line died at the Alamo with the immortal 32. And not only was I surprised about that, but even more touching was the fact that he had a wife and she had a baby about 2 weeks after the Alamo fell. And when I saw that at a family reunion, I turned to my cousins and I said, "Did you know about that?" And they said, "No, nobody knew about it." So I said, you know, I think this woman probably deserves some memory. We should honor her. I think she probably went through a lot. So my husband brought me to Gonzales and we began to search. I had never spent much time in Gonzales, but I found here a treasure trove of information. I knew my dad had lived here as a young boy, but I didn't know all the secrets and surprises of my family. George Davis had left some wonderful memoirs. As I understand it, the last time I knew, they were on display at the museum. They may still be there. I don't know if they changed those out. The Archives Library gave me a copy of them, and that was about the first third of the story. I started, Spirit of Gonzales is the biography of Sydney, who was John Kellogg's wife. It covers about 15 years of her life, starts when she's 3. I started the story in Cincinnati, and some of my beta readers, when I was first starting on the book, said, "That's a long way from Gonzales." And one man, who I'll just say was a man's man, retired from the Army, raised 4 boys in a very manly way. He came to me and said, "It's so girly. It starts out so girly." But his wife kind of rolled her eyes and said, "Don't worry about it." He cried through the whole thing. So he said, "Well, it doesn't stay girly for very long." And truly it doesn't. Somebody asked earlier, what age group is it for? It started out just being for my cousins. And I really didn't intend for it to be a certain category. But when I got to the publishing phase, my editor said, "Well, you have to have a category." And I said, "Well, it's most appropriate for Texas history, 9th grade or 7th grade. So let's go with that." And so that's what we kind of categorized it for. That was the statement in the very generous and sweet award that I've been given for this book by the DRT. The Virginia M. Law Award is for the most distinguished book to teach young people, young adults, Texas history. And that was another of many surprises. So the book was finished And I think it was the summer of 2019. We have a cow. We were in the market in Columbus, you know, the Saturday market down by the courthouse square. And a teacher came by and she got so excited. She said, "This is exactly the book I need." It was like she read my mind. She just saw the book and she knew that it was exactly what she needed. She teaches 7th grade history, Texas history, at St. Anthony's School in Columbus. So I said, "I'm going to give you a classroom set of these books with the agreement that you will allow me to talk with the kids and get feedback from the kids. I want to know what the kids, think about this." And so she agreed. So we were invited several times to some very nice activities that the teacher hosted. And on through our meetings, the kids wanted to know, what is true about this? What did you make up about this? So I explained to them it was all true. I wanted them to know the culture of Texas during those pioneer days. And I tried to explain, it didn't all happen exactly to the person I said it happened to, at the exact place I said it happened, but it all happened. It all really happened. It just was, I sort of borrowed some information to include it, and it fit into the story because all of these things did happen in Gonzales. They just might not have happened exactly the way they said they did. I said they did. But it was the culture that I wanted to convey to the kids. One little girl, I said, "Now, was there any problems? Do you think I should change anything?" And in a very kind of a backhanded compliment, this one little timid girl raised her hand and she said, "I wish you hadn't ended those chapters the way you did, because I want to put that book down, but I can't." I said, "Thank you very much."
Great criticism.
Yeah, that was criticism I welcomed. So the last time we met with the class, the kids said, "What happened next?" And I said, "Oh my goodness." It had taken me 10 years to finish this book because I was kind of a wandering detective. I didn't know what I started out just making a journal for my cousins, and the more I found out, the more beautiful it became, the more complicated, the more amazing, the more surprises I got. So I decided I really owe it to these kids to find out what happened next. How many of you have read the book already? So there's a little baby that's born. Of course, I said that at the beginning. Sydney had a baby shortly after the fall of the Alamo on the runaway scrape. It's documented that she had it in a wagon. I wrote it a little bit different. So I began to think about the family that was left. We lost a lot of family in the book, but there were some people left. Certainly John Benjamin III. That's really who the students wanted to know about. But I couldn't find much about him. I decided that probably a lot of people at that time, after all they went through, they just wanted to go home and have peace and quiet. They didn't really plan for us to investigate their lives. And so they didn't advertise what they were doing. I probably could find more if I really wanted to search, but I went through the short list of people that were left. John Benjamin, I found his grave and his wife's grave. They're out at Pilgrim Church, south of here, not too far. And at the time, that was about all I could find. So I thought, let me go ahead and see what else I can find. I found John Benjamin, the senior, death date in October of 1836, which wasn't long after the fall of the Alamo. And then I Googled his wife's name, and I got another really big surprise. In May, 19th of May of 1836, when you think about that, that's less than a month after the victory at San Jacinto, May the 19th. San Jacinto battle was fought on April the 21st. On May the 19th, there was a Comanche raid in Texas, up in what is now Limestone County. There were 5 people taken by the Indians that day. Cynthia Ann Parker, we probably know the most about. We've all heard about her life with the Comanches and how she didn't want to return. She gave birth to Quanah, and he became the last of the great Comanche war chiefs. And along with Cynthia Ann, they took her brother, John Richard. He also was sort of caught between two cultures. He ended up in Mexico. Cynthia Ann's aunt, Rachel, was 17. She was married. She had a baby in arms. James Pratt was 18 months old, and she was also newly pregnant. She hadn't gone very far into her pregnancy. She was taken that day. And the fifth person that was taken was a 40-year-old woman named Elizabeth Kellogg. And I thought, oh my, is this possible? Can this be the same Elizabeth Kellogg? How many Elizabeth Kellogg's could be in Texas in May of 1836? Maybe at least two. I didn't know. So I really studied that and tried to pick that out. And I found a paper, after several days of searching, I found a paper that was published online by a man who apparently was in the same situation I was in. He was searching to prove whether or not this Elizabeth Kellogg was the same Elizabeth Kellogg who lost her son at the Alamo. And he said, I have searched and searched and I cannot find any proof either way. I can't disprove it and I can't prove it. So I'm going to assume that she was the same Elizabeth Kellogg. Well, with that encouragement and that saving time, I thought, I'm going to believe what he believes. He's already done the hard work. So I also thought, even if it's two different women, they suffered so much that I think whichever they were, whether they were the same woman or two women, they deserve to be remembered. And of course, we knew a lot about Cynthia Ann, and we had read a lot about the Parkers and Fort Parker. But Elizabeth was kind of forgotten. And so I thought, I'm going to go with this, and we'll sort it out later. I knew I didn't have 10 years to sort out all the nitpicky details. Well, then we went to Limestone County. I met the lady that is kind of the director of the family fort there, and she was very friendly and very encouraging. She bought, I think, 48 books of the first copy. And we got to be friends. I got to meet some ladies of the Historical Preservation Society in Limestone County, and they invited me to come to some things. Well, I was scheduled in the third week of March to go back to Limestone County and do some events like this. I was supposed to visit the Historical Preservation Society and go to the school. Well, we all know what happened the third week of March. Everything shut down. And so I canceled all of those events. My son, who's in the medical field at Fort Sam in San Antonio, said, Mom, this is really bad. People don't need to be spreading it around. So I decided, much as I hated to, I would have to cancel everything. So I sat at my computer from March till the end of the year. I don't recommend that you do that. If you ever find yourself in quarantine, at least schedule the time every day to get up and move around, because it just about did me in physically. I'm kind of recovering, but I did. I sat at the computer for 8 to 10 hours every day, almost 7 days a week, to get this project done. And we did. We got it done. There was a lot to, I didn't bring my books in. There was a lot. Once I got the idea of where Elizabeth was, this Elizabeth, not knowing which Elizabeth she was, there were references. James Parker had written his account of the raid, and he spent the rest of his life trying to rescue these family members, and Elizabeth was the first to be rescued. In Sam Houston's biography, he had been injured in April with a leg, ankle, I think his ankle injury, severe injury. He went to St. Augustine to recover, but in truth, he had gone to Nacogdoches just in the nick of time when James would show up and the Delaware Indians would bring Elizabeth there. It all just happened. Maybe it was one of those God nod things, you know, everybody just was in the right place at the right time, and Elizabeth was the first to be ransomed with James' help and the financing of Sam Houston. I also found 2 books written by a teacher in Katy who published or republished Rachel's account, which was so gruesome. That was what I really had to water down, because I didn't want 7th graders reading what really happened to Rachel. In fact, I didn't even want to read it, and I was retired. But there was quite a bit of information to get me past the raid to Elizabeth's ransom. It was recorded that she was passed. The Comanches had, I called them neighbors. They called on the neighbors to help them with this raid. And when they left the fort and camped for the first night, the next day, they shared the bounty and passed the captives along. Elizabeth was fortunately passed to the Kiowa, and then they sold her to the Delaware. There may have been some in between. Those are the only 2 other tribes that I knew of, and in the length of time that she was with them, I think that was probably as far as she went with those 2 tribes. But that gave me an opportunity, knowing by this time that 7th graders were going to be reading the story, I was hoping. That gave me an opportunity to talk about the differences of the Indian cultures, that they weren't all the same. They weren't physically the same. They didn't support themselves in the same way, and so that's included in the book as part of this story. My writing is not encyclopedic. It's just a story, and so I incorporated that in her journey as she was making her way towards being ransomed. And so each time I finished a book, I had a list of cousins that I wanted to share the book with. And so when the book was done, it also was given the award by the DRT of the Virginia M. Law Award, which I was really surprised about, because I didn't think they would give it to the same author 2 years in a row. And I felt a little bit guilty, but not so much that I wouldn't accept it. So with all of that done, I got out my list of cousins and their addresses, and I realized that one of my cousins, I wasn't sure I had the right address. And so I called him. He happens to live in Cost. Some of you probably know him, Larry Vickers. I don't know if you know him. He and Kenneth are my dad's much younger cousins, and he's quite a card.
Yes.
So I said, Larry, I got a second book here for you. I want to send you a copy, but I don't know if I have your proper address. Well, what is that book about? He said. And I told him, and I said, I don't know if she was our Elizabeth or not. Oh yeah, he said she was. I said, she was? He said, yeah, don't you remember Aunt Merle and Aunt Belle? He said, I used to go visit with them, and I would sit and listen to their stories. And he said, when they talked about a woman relative that was captured by the Indians, I paid attention. I said, Larry, how old were you at that time? Because I thought, I was trying to, figure out dates and so forth. He said, I was about 4 or 5. But, little boys were all about cowboys and Indians. He said, that's the truth. That really was our Elizabeth Kellogg. What a surprise. And I was so glad to get that affirmation. So I wanted to know more. So I said, Larry, would you please meet us for lunch over at the Running M one day, and let's have some lunch, and I want to pick your brain and have you tell me more. He said, yeah, I'll do that. So he came and we talked. And he told me a lot of things that I didn't know about my family. My dad never talked about family things, but I think he would be very proud that we discovered the family secrets and the family surprises. So I hope you enjoy the stories. They're as true as I could make them, because I wanted to give the best answer I could to the kids at the Catholic school when they said, what happened next? And so that is my story for my family.
Thank you so much. And she does have some of the books. If some of you didn't know, she's got them on sale, both of them for $25.
Yes.
Or
On Amazon, they're selling for $15, and you have to pay shipping and taxes. So we're selling them for $13 individually, and if you buy 2 together, it's only $25. And for every book that's sold today, we're giving $5 to the chapter.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
The Kellogg stayed in the Gonzales area?
Did they stay here?
How did she get to the Parker Fort?
You'll have to read the
book.
story.
Okay,
good answer.
Yes. You read the first one?
Yeah.
Okay. When this book ends, the last 2 or 3 pages of this book, you know what happened there. So the Kellogg's are with Sydney in Harrisburg, which is a true scenario. And, you know, John Benjamin has business to take care of Sydney the very last day. And Elizabeth is sitting, because she just can't go to the cemetery. She's just sitting there waiting for him to get back. And something happens that allows her to go see her family. Her maiden name was Duty. And if you know about the Parkers, about 4 or 5 Parkers married 4 or 5 Duties and brought those 2 families together. And they asked, the brothers came down in about 1820, and they asked Stephen Austin, can we, you know, the Mexican law was you had to be Catholic. You had to swear faith to the Catholic Church. So these brothers came down and asked Stephen Austin, couldn't we come down and we'll stay way up here and we want to make a Baptist church? He said, no. In fact, do you know that at one point, Stephen Austin said 1 Methodist circuit rider would do more damage to his colony than a dozen horse thieves. So he wasn't too fun. I think he was a spiritual man from some of the things that he wrote and said, but he wasn't too keen on pastors and preachers and circuit riders. So he said, no, you cannot come down here and make a Baptist church. Well, in my mind, and I didn't write this, but this is how I thought about it. I can just see these brothers on their horses going back to Illinois saying, what did you hear him say? And the other one saying, I think he said, if we make a Baptist church up here and come down, it's okay, just as long as we don't make it down there. So that's what they did. So they came. So there was Elder John Parker married a Sally Duty. And then several of her daughters married Duty men. And this happened up in Illinois. And they formed this 30 to 50 member organization of Primitive Baptist, and then they came down as a group. Yes, ma'am.
If I remember right, Socklaven, our former sheriff, is related, has the Duty family in his genealogy.
Well, we're probably cousins then.
Yeah.
That name, that doesn't sound familiar. That's quite an unusual name.
Socklaven, yes.
Socklaven.
Okay, and you'll be here after the meeting?
Yes,
If
my
you have any
husband
questions.
and I are here. We'll be here after the meeting to sell you a book or 2, or answer questions, or whatever you'd like.
And how are you spelling Duty?
D-U-T-Y.
And I have an Aunt Duty, and I'm not sure where she was named after a Duty. Do you know anything about the state of lineage for the Duties? I mean, you said they grew up in Illinois, but were they ever in the state of Texas? They came down here?
They came to and made Fort Parker in Limestone County, and there were a lot of Duties. So I have Richard Duty's will. He died young, in his 40s, and then his wife married Mr. Parker. And so if you want to give me information later on, I can help you with what I know, what I have.
Awesome. Okay. If there are any other questions, let's hold those till the end so we can get our business done. And thank you so
Sure.
much. Wonderful.
My pleasure.
Okay. We need to approve the minutes from the